Welcome to the Daring CEO Co-op podcast, where we celebrate entrepreneurs who dare to build a business on their own terms. I'm your host, Denise Klein, and each episode, we're going to dive into stories, talents, and passions of those who are redefining success and making their mark by sharing their gifts with the world. Join us for inspiration, real talk, and actionable insights as we embrace the power of daring to do business your way. Hey, entrepreneurs. Denise Klein here with the Daring CEO Co-op podcast. And I love doing this so much because I get to meet new people that I haven't got to meet yet, which is a little interesting today because Jamie, who you're going to meet here in just a second, we actually live in the same town, which I cannot say for all of my guests. And we have never actually gotten to talk in person. So I had to rein her into this just so we could do that. So I'm super excited. So our guest today is Jamie Haynes, and she is an energy and wellness coach. And we're going to get into all the cool things that she does. But first, we're going to hear her story about her transition to becoming a daring CEO. And for those of us that are new maybe to the podcast, we call ourselves the Daring CEO Co-op because you have to be at least a little daring to start a business, because let's just say it's not the easiest thing. I do not consider myself to be a particularly daring person, but I challenge myself to do things outside of my comfort zone. Therefore, I have a business, and I'm doing this with Jamie today. It's just easier to do things outside your comfort zone when you bring somebody along with you. So, Jamie Haynes, tell us a little bit about you and how you became an energy and wellness coach.
Well, thank you for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here. I always love coming on and sharing a story and just having a chat with people, because I think it's the stories and what makes us who we are and how we connect through community that really just help us find the vibrancy in life. And that's really what I'm about. So let's see, where do I start? My story starts in 7th grade. Actually, I started using my chore money to buy medical journals and fitness publications and wellness magazines, because I knew even at that age that I wanted to help people live a healthy and vital life. So I was raised in a family where there were a lot of health issues and concerns, and a lot of it really did boil down to lifestyle choices. And I saw people who, were talking about how once upon a time when they were younger, they could do all these things. And now that they're older, they can't do all these things. And it just kind of felt like they were living in a shell. And I just, at a very young age was determined to figure out another way and be able to be 90 and still getting down with it and dropping it like it's hot and having fun.
I love that.
So yeah, that's when it started. So yeah, right out of high school, we went into college, to go into kinesiology. And I love studying exercise. I'm one of those people that love to exercise. I love to work out. And more about that later, because there's a season where maybe I didn't love it so much, and that has to do with that word called menopause. And we can talk about that if you like too.
We're going to.
So yeah, it morphed and through college. I've worked in, taught in, and managed every type of facility, whether it's a big box gym, corporate gym, medical based wellness, studios, you name it. And so, it just morphed into this fitness, field. And little did I know back in 1996 that YouTube and the world of everyone's a health coach would so much change my career path, that maybe I would have stayed in medical school. But alas, here we are. And so that is definitely, we can talk more about it, and I'll let you guide this conversation. But how the daring CEO part really came in for me is, okay, so if this is what I love to do, and this is what I love to help people with, then how do I not just survive, but thrive in an industry that has changed so much in 25 years, and still be vital myself and not kill myself in the process. So, and the sense of just running myself ragged into the ground. So, and there have also been ebbs and flows of that as well.
Yeah. And I think that is one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on. And I love having on people that talk about helping us find some kind of balance, right? Because we do run ourselves ragged, and maybe I'm just kind of showing my own bias here, because I do keep reaching out to folks like you that because I am so unbalanced. I'm kind of an all or nothing girl. I work a million hours and then I crash. But I think that having reframing how we kind of think about the importance of taking care of ourselves, not just mentally, but physically, and a combination of the two,
Yeah.
I think is really important. So you've been doing this for a very long time, and you talked a little bit about how things have changed from 1996 until now. I mean, that's a long time span. It's hard for me to wrap my brain around.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
Mhm.
What do you think is, I don't know, what do you think one of the biggest changes is that have happened in the last 30 years when it comes to especially women taking care of ourselves?
Wow. Well, there's a couple of things I share a lot with clients, and that is number one, back in the day in the 50s, for instance, you might take in 100,000 pieces of information in your lifetime, and that's if you were like a doctorate or a PhD.
Hmm.
Now, with these computers in our hands, we're taking in 100,000 pieces of information a day. And it's just overwhelming to our nervous system, right? So I do a lot of nervous system work sometimes with my clients. They come to me for things like, oh, my back hurts, or I have pelvic floor dysfunction, I'm leaking urine when
Hmm.
I laugh, or, I can't run because of XYZ. But we end up actually working on many things because it's also integrated. The other thing that's changed a lot, I think, for women, and or should be changing, will be changing, is the fact that, I say to clients even just the other day, we're not in 1980s anymore. This isn't the Jane Fonda era where, more is more and we have to
Hmm.
go out there and kill ourselves in the gym for it to matter, or we have to, you know, starve ourselves with calories or whatever. Like, it is really, we are natural beings, just like the trees, just like the flowers, just like everything else on this earth. And so how do we embrace those cycles within ourselves? What season of life are you in right now? And not just life, but we break this down into what season of the season are you in right now? Are you a morning walker during the summer? But clearly that needs to change when the sun's not coming up until 7:30, and maybe you already have to be getting ready for work. So how do you embrace those cyclical changes around you in nature so that you can also embody those cyclical changes within yourself? And then how do you find those seasons of nature even within your day, right? Some
Hmm.
people are very much an early bird, and other people are night owls, and there's no right or wrong there. It's just, how are you as a being? And
Hmm.
so, how we start to see our wellness journey as women, I believe, needs to become more about how are we being versus what are we doing, right?
That is, wasn't expecting something quite that deep today. I have to say that I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that, and it resonates with me. And still, I'm such a doer. I
Hmm.
just am. I believe I just mentioned I work for a million hours, and then I crash. And so, yeah, I think that is such an interesting point of view. And I think feel like that's something that's definitely I hear more and more of, and I think that's a big change. Maybe it's just, I don't know if it's just women or society, or especially I think for those of us, maybe it's just the circle that I'm around, because so many people I talk to are just like you and I,
Yeah.
we're, 40, 50 something women, we're running businesses, we're doing all the things, a lot of us still have children, and some of us still have other jobs, and we're trying to fit all the things in, much less, all the technology and the 100,000 bits of
Yes.
course it's overwhelming. Of
Absolutely.
course it is.
And, I think the other thing too, part of that, speaking about technology and the information that's coming at us, like I mentioned earlier, my career, if I had known in 1996 that YouTube was going to make everybody a fitness coach, and that technology was going to demand so much of me in my career,
Mhm.
to be able to just survive, or be out there to help the people that you want to be able to help, apps and technology, all those things, the things that I've had to learn even in just the past 12 months make my mind want to explode a little bit. And
Yeah.
I'll be honest and say, yeah, I'm an energy and wellness coach, but I've spent just as many nights as I can count crying and going, what the heck is happening? But also honoring that, right? That those emotions matter,
They do.
and we
They
need to
do.
be able to just let it have its 90 seconds of fame, like that anger,
Mhm.
frustration, overwhelm, sadness, confusion, like all those things. Let it have its 90 seconds of fame, let it out, and
Mhm.
then take a breath, right?
And
Come back
restart and
into that
reboot.
Parasympathetic nervous system, come out of that sympathetic nervous system, change your breath. Your breath literally changes the nervous system response that you're in.
Mhm.
And now you can think with more clarity, right? How do we get into nature? How do we take this walks? But it's not about shooting all over yourself either.
Right. Mm.
So again, we come into the seasons. We can't do all the things all the time. But what do I need to do now that serves me best at this moment? And not just your business, because your business is separate from you, right? Your
Mhm.
business has its own energy. It's its own like entity, if you will.
It
It's like,
is.
this other person. You are you. So how do you take care of yourself? How do you help your body? And I have a lot of empty nesters here. I have people who have children here. Like, I have a client who just left. She's got 7 kids. They're all in private schools. She does her whole loop twice a day. Like, and still yet, how does she fit this into her day? And that's one of the things I really like to teach is it's not about quantity, it is about consistency and
There you go.
quality. And the quality isn't about, oh, I have to kill myself. I have to be like super sore. I have to make my body like pay for
Mhm.
that cookie I ate. Wrong,
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
But if you take 20 minutes and you can find nutritious movement that feels good and that brings you joy. She asked me today, she has diastasis recti, like, what's the one thing I can do consistently that will help my diastasis recti heal? Do you want to know what my answer was?
What's that?
You want to guess?
I have no earthly stretching. I don't know. Walking.
Walking is great, actually. Everybody should be
Mhm.
walking as much as they can throughout the day. Like, go listen to your podcast and do all those things while you're walking. Or better yet, leave your phone at home for crying out loud and go take a walk. But dancing.
Really?
Yeah, go dance. Like, you get all that juicy fascial movement. It's joy. It brings out that childlike spirit.
Imagine
The
that.
body heals with those things. My component that I use is, heal is to honor, ease, align, and listen to your body.
That is not a message that we hear out in the wild, I will say. One of the things I find very refreshing about your approach is that because I feel like a lot of gurus will be like, this is the way you have to do it. Like one size fits all, or, you have to do,
Mhm.
I don't know, there's one that's called like 75 hard. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, not that can't be a great program for people if that's your thing. But I think when the word hard is in the title, I'm like, does it have to be like why does it have to be hard? Especially for people that maybe struggle physically.
Mhm.
You mentioned earlier that you really like exercise. For a lot of us, that's not a natural state of being. And so, when we get these messages that you have to work out 6 days a week and it's got to be an hour and you've got to work this body part and that body part and switch off and do this and do.
Yep.
So I love that your approach feels more maybe organic is maybe a good
I like that word.
word for it, that it's what does your body need?
Yes. So that is my number one thing with people. And so, like I said, sometimes people come to me. I'm very nerdy. I'm very data driven. I love science. I've been reading it since I was in 7th grade. So if they come to me and they're like, I've got this hitch in my giddy up back here in my hip and I don't know what it is, I will help you figure it out. We'll get
Hmm.
to the bottom of it. And we might
Hmm.
have to do some really nitty gritty scientific data driven things. But at the same time, I'm going to, like today, I said, I don't want you to move in fear. Because she
Hmm.
said to me, well, I don't want to do these things at home because I'm afraid I'm doing them wrong.
Mm,
Okay, well, number one, this movement, while we can clean it up and we can get a little bit more juice out of that orange in some ways, you are intrinsically not going to hurt yourself doing a bridge.
yeah.
So,
That's an interesting point because I think I've thought that same thing. Like I've talked about, my sister and I talk about this all the time. We talk about it, but we don't do it. We talk about, wanting to learn how to do even just some kind of weightlifting because we keep hearing about how that is really good for
yeah,
women of a certain age, especially.
yes.
But we worry about doing those exercises
Okay, so then
wrong.
when you start to get into things with specific load, especially heavier load, good coaching is absolutely important because
Hmm.
yes, that is where I do start to see most of the injuries happen and occur because when you put an extrinsic or outside load onto your body, you've
Hmm.
got all different things applying here, muscles, joints, tendons, fascia, the whole thing, right?
Hmm.
And also movement mechanics. You are a tensegrity model has a human body, right? So
Mhm.
things want to be able to move well, and that everything's integrated. So that shoulder that doesn't want to get out of your ear absolutely can be affecting your hip. And if you're
Mhm.
squatting and the shoulders are shrugging up and your chin is jutting forward, that is absolutely affecting what's happening at your hip. So
Mhm.
when you start to load the body, and yes, weightlifting is important for
Mhm.
any woman over the age of 20, actually, and there's a whole other conversation about that.
Mhm.
Um, yes, you want to have some good coaching, some good mechanics. That's why I use something like a Pilates reformer. I had a woman who told me she could not do pull-ups,
Mhm.
and she felt like mechanically, like she just physically could not do pull-ups. Well, mechanically, her body was fine. I got her on a reformer. Her muscles and bones could do exactly what they needed to do for a pull-up. It
Mhm.
really just was about teaching her body how to activate and become stronger and progressively overload
Mhm.
against gravity, right? So
Right,
now we have to teach
exactly.
that. I also use an aerial rig for the same thing. So then I got her over to the aerial rig and had her doing Australian pull-ups, which her feet are connected to the floor the whole time. And she was like, whoa, that was really hard, but I can see where that would make me stronger.
Mhm.
And that's the other thing. I use these tools that aren't really normal.
Yeah, I was about to say both of
Um,
those things are
very
I've
physical.
heard of them because I follow you and I'm paying attention to what you're doing, but I'm not seeing those kind of things out. It's funny because as I mentioned, we haven't really had an opportunity to have a conversation, but I've seen you around and seen your information, and I think I reached out to you one day because I was having a back pain and a hip pain. I was like, I need Jamie. But I knew that much. And it's crazy that you're talking about, the shoulders and the jutting. And I'm like, we don't think about how interconnected our bodies are. So you wouldn't think that something you're doing with your shoulders or your jaw would have anything to do
Oh,
with your hip, but there is an alignment. I mean, that's what chiropractic care talks a bit about.
mhm.
But, we're, like you said, everything's connected. So yeah, it
Everything's
makes sense.
connected. Yeah, there's a lot of data and science behind, say, forward head posture. So going
Mhm.
back to, say, smartphones or tablets, iPads, technology, right? What has changed in the past 20 years? So one of the biggest changes has been technology because
Mhm.
not only are we getting just overwhelmed with a massive amounts of information any time of our day, but we're also then sitting in forward neck posture most of the time while doing it. And forward neck
Mhm.
posture creates this whole chain reaction. Now, when people come to me and they're like, I'm in pain about this, pain is your body trying to communicate, right?
Mhm.
And one of the stories I tell them is like if you have children or had children and you, hey mom, I want a snack, and it maybe starts kind of small and subtle, and then you ignore the child and they're like, mom, and then they're like, mom, and then they're like a 3-year-old having a temper tantrum.
Yeah.
That's how pain starts. Pain is just simply the body trying to communicate with you
Mhm.
that something's not quite right. Maybe you need to spend more time away from your desk. Maybe you do need to lift some more weights. Maybe you need to stretch more. Maybe you need more joy in your life and less stress, right? And these are all
Mhm.
the things I address. So when people come into me, sometimes it is very physical, very somatic, and other times it's also very like emotional, right? Or
Mhm.
psychological, like what kind of stress and convenience will kill us? Those are our two
Oh,
main killers right now. I believe
yeah, I
everything
believe
that's
that.
this ease in our body in this particular day and age goes to stress and inconvenience,
Mhm.
right?
I agree with that.
And so, even to the hormonal level, right? Like the stress and convenience will jack up our hormones, and not just for 40 to 50-year-old women's and beyond, but also like I have a 19 and a 20, almost 21-year-old, like hormones still affect us in that age.
Absolutely.
We just weren't thinking about it when we were
Right, we
20.
don't and we think about it differently too,
Yeah.
and I think this is an area that we probably don't know nearly enough about as human beings, about our own bodies and
Yeah.
hormones
Yeah.
in particular.
Yeah, that is one of the things I started with. So even before I got into Pilates and yoga and all of those other things, I was very much focused on metabolic weight training before CrossFit even came around or other things that are metabolic weight training.
Mhm.
But just using dumbbells and that sort of thing, how your body elicits certain hormonal responses to weight training is
Mhm.
key. And like women who are still in um, cyclical phases in their life, so they're still having a cycle, how you work out during your luteal phase of your cycle should be different than how you work out in your follicular phase. It
Mm,
should also be different than how you're working out during your actual cycle, your menstrual cycle itself.
no.
Because how you burn fuel is different because of your hormonal levels at that time. So you're like a hybrid car. Um, Sometimes you burn more fat, sometimes you burn more even to your muscle, so women who are
Mm-hmm.
going and doing certain exercises all the time and they're like, gosh, I feel like I'm not building any muscle and I'm also not burning fat. Well, it's a hormonal response actually. And so knowing how your hormones work with those things. So I have, clients, that's why I can't pick like that one thing to talk about when people are like, you got to pick one thing, but I
Yeah,
don't. My
you
one
can't.
thing is the human in front of me and
Yeah.
figuring out what is their place right now. Some people do need more weight training. Some people need to back off of it a little bit and relax and breathe some more. So it's
Mm-hmm.
it's really working with the person in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
and helping them find more ease.
Yeah.
And
And
that
they're
doesn't mean lazy, and that doesn't mean not doing anything.
mm-mm.
But what's the ease?
Yeah.
Because movement, you said earlier, like most of us don't like to work out or those sort of, actually the body to the fundamental level
Mm-hmm.
does like movement. It
Mm-hmm.
loves changing shape. It
Mm-hmm.
loves changing its ranges of motion. It likes to move. And when it feels stuck is actually when we feel the most pain, usually.
Mm-hmm.
So if we like to move, how does your body like to move? And again, this goes back to seasons, which we talked about before,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
You might have really enjoyed running track in high school, but now your body says that's a negative, Ghost Rider. I think I prefer dancing around my kitchen instead. Okay,
Yeah.
movement still heals. It just might look different than what you did 20 years ago.
Yeah. I love that idea of movement heals. I did a coaching program last year with my friend Stacy McFarland called Transform. If
Hey,
you've
Stacy.
not spent any
Stacy.
time with Stacy, uh, please do that. She's just
My
an
text
incredible.
Stacy used to cut my hair when I was a little girl.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome.
Love
Yeah. So
Stacy.
Stacy has a great story.
Yeah.
If you've not heard her story, I did record one with her last year. But I did this Transform program with her, and she was talking. Trying to remember, I was talking about movement healing. And she would talk about like where we feel stress and stuff in our bodies. And I had no idea what she was talking about because I was a giant stress ball, really is what it came down to. And she would talk about the connection of our nervous system to movement. And like when you are having emotions, like moving can not just helps your body, but can actually help with that. So you talk about
Yes.
doing some energy stuff. Do you want to, can you talk about that and how those things kind of work together?
Yeah, I mean, so fundamentally, the nervous system does help us move, right? It's responsible. It's like the central nervous system. It's the grand central station of movement. So if you are trying to do a movement that doesn't feel good to your nervous system, your body's going to maybe want to shut that down, right?
Mhm.
If something like CrossFit isn't going to feel good to your body right now, your body's going to let you know that. And that doesn't mean that you never push through something that's hard, right?
Mm,
Humans are resilient. We've been around for thousands and thousands of years, and we were meant to do hard things, right?
yeah.
But when you did a barn raising, you didn't do a barn raising every single day. You did a barn raising. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, so
Yeah.
there are times to do hard things and there are times to not do hard things. And knowing how to calibrate the two. And I don't like the word balance, but we can come back to that in a second if you want.
Okay.
So, that energetics of the nervous system and how do you come from a stress response to a parasympathetic response? Like even in my workouts for 15 years now, before vagus nerve became a buzzword, I have helped people like at a workout, we always left. Like even when I taught bar, we stopped, we ended class with shavasana. And at first people bucked me against, they were like, "Ah,
Mhm.
I'm not in yoga. I don't do shavasana. What are you making us do?" But they were all 40-plus-year-old women. And I had to explain to them that if I let you walk out of this room right now in the sympathetic nervous state, right? Because I just kicked your tail and you survived, your body will actually leave here and keep burning muscle and storing fat.
And
Now,
that's not what they want.
if you lay your tush down and relax and let me use my calm, soothing voice over you, relax your shoulders. I would get my hands on them and like knead out their shoulders and traction their head. And by the end of class, they were all zenned out. Now you can leave here and your body will keep the muscle that you just worked so hard for and burn fat. You just flipped a switch to the somatic level. But now, even energetically in the mental level, you've turned off that I just got my butt kicked to
Mhm.
wow, that felt good.
Mhm.
And you maybe want to come back again. In fact, people
Yeah.
started coming out. My classes were sold out for bar, and people would say, I just come for Shavasana.
Wow.
They were
That's
willing, after I
amazing.
finally got them over that pinnacle,
Yeah.
they started to enjoy that type of movement because their brain and their nervous system started to recognize, yes, I'm going to have to do something hard for 40, 45 minutes, but
Mhm.
I'm also getting stronger
Mhm.
and I get to relax at the end, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm in good
You get
hands.
this little reward,
Yeah.
this, taking care of yourself and
And
this
they saw the
peace.
result, right? Because if I
Yes.
kept letting them leave with their sympathetic nervous system on, they would keep burning muscle and holding on
Mhm.
to fat and wondering why their bar class didn't work,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But instead,
Right.
they were seeing results because I was addressing their nervous system and hormonal levels with
Mhm.
that class.
Back on the hormonal thing, one of the things that I'm learning about, and I know we'll talk about menopause and perimenopause. So there's two kind of things I want to talk about. I keep hearing about cortisol,
Oh, yes.
and I'm like, okay, I am sure my cortisol is off the charts. I'm certain of it, even without testing. So I want to talk about that a little bit. But I keep hearing about it, but then what the hell do you do about it? And so, if you have an answer for that, I'd be curious. And then I would love to talk because we think about hormones, we would think about, estrogen and things. But I, until my doctor was like, oh, you're perimenopausal, I was like, I really had no idea what any of that meant. And so, I'd be curious from your perspective, um, as our bodies change as we get older, what role physical movement plays in perimenopause, maybe hopefully making it easier to go through.
It does. It's huge, actually. And again, I'm so happy that menopause has become the new buzzword. So
Mhm,
while social media and all these things have its blessing and its curse, right? Like you get
mhm.
a lot of information, but you can also get information that maybe you weren't privy to before, right? Like
Yeah.
I've been teaching about menopause, since I don't remember. It's been at least 15 or more years, but
Mhm.
I've only to the people in front of me. I wasn't able to get it out to
Yeah.
people. So we also now have more the assumptions we were making 15 years ago about what was happening in the female hormonal system was based on just what we knew from the men's hormonal systems, right? Because
Which is
women
weird,
weren't even in research until like 15 years ago. So,
which blows my brain,
right.
really. I'm like, seriously?
But you
Didn't
can
occur to anybody that we might be
Well, now we know. And in fact, one of my dear friends who I went to high school, actually, we've known each other since elementary school. She is a brain researcher.
Mhm.
She's so nerdy and she
Awesome.
studies sex hormones in the brain. So
Mhm.
I like
Oh, she's a
pick her
good
brain.
resource.
Dude.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
So anyway, but yes, cortisol, the way I've been explaining it for years, and this is kind of like a little story, right? Is let's say that you've got, a mom who's got three teenage boys.
Mhm.
And mom, they're older now. So mom's decided she's going to go on a weekend trip or a week trip to Florida or something with her girlfriends. And so these three teenage boys have decided that they're just going to wreak havoc around the house. And their
Mhm.
names are cortisol, norepinephrine, and adrenaline, right? Like your stress hormones, essentially.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
estrogen, mom, is meant to kind of keep those hormones in place a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Keep them tidy, keep them settled. But as estrogen starts to leave the building,
Mhm.
cortisol and his little brothers are allowed to ramp up their shenanigans.
Yeah.
As they ramp up their shenanigans, then that's when we create havoc in the body. And not just physically, but we also know now, like mentally, like perimenopausal and menopausal, postmenopausal women have more anxiety, more depression, more critical
Mhm.
inner voice. The absolute lack of desire to even work out. Maybe if they even loved working out before, they just don't want to move. They feel sore. Their joints are tender and sore. Their body is aching. They have headaches now all of a sudden. Everything's going amok. And we feel like we're in this foreign body that we've never had before because we haven't.
Mhm.
It's a new experience, right? And
Mhm.
so part of this helping to come out of those responses is to address movement. So here again, this is where like for my menopausal women and stuff, I say like yes, you should be lifting some weights and they should be heavier than 5 pounds. And you should be doing that 2 to 3 times a week.
Mhm.
Okay. But other than that, you should be doing lots of Pilates, lots of yoga, because we get to move all that juicy fascia and keep things fluid and moving, and learn
Mhm.
proper alignment and breathing,
Mm.
because the breathing you do in Pilates and yoga help reset that nervous system and help you decrease those cortisol spikes, right?
Mhm.
And then when, of course, you start to have more cortisol spikes, that also spikes your insulin more. And then you become pre-diabetic. And then you have
Mm.
that pre-diabetic body starting to happen, right? And you're like,
Mhm.
what is happening?
Yeah.
So, yes, lifting weights, lots of Pilates and yoga. The other stuff I used to prescribe to my clients, I still do. So, lifting, Pilates, and yoga, lots of walking. And it doesn't have to be 10,000 steps a day. If you're only doing 2,000 right now, please don't go out and start doing 10,000 a day.
Right.
Just add 50 steps more a day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Get up to 10, 15, 20,000. And also know that you don't have to walk those every single day. If you think of our predecessors
Mhm.
who did a lot of walking, they weren't doing a same set every single day. Some days it was lighter to walk to
Mhm.
the creek and get this and walk there and walk there. And other days they did more walking. So it's the average that we're really kind of looking for, right? Especially in
Yeah.
this day of convenience when we want
Yeah.
to sit at our desk and be with electronics all day long. So,
Yeah.
and then also laughing
Mhm.
decreases cortisol.
I love that.
Go hang out with your friends and have a good laugh. Turn on Smile Love Lucy. Um, Dancing,
Mhm. You mentioned you like dancing,
I do.
but I love
Humming.
that. Oh,
So find yourself humming if you need to do a quick reset of your nervous system and decrease your stress.
interesting.
Singing, and it doesn't matter if you can carry a tune, just sing,
Just doing it,
just do it. And then also orgasms,
Oh, well,
which
there
kind of
you
goes more into
go.
my pelvic floor work, but
Yeah.
yeah, so
All those things can bring joy. Imagine that.
yes.
We need to have that, and that's one of the things, I mentioned Stacy earlier. She would talk about, finding little ways to do joy. So she messaged us one day, or she put it on her Facebook, I don't remember, that she and her husband, Jim, were talking about, how do you skip? And so they were like trying to remember, in their 50s, like, okay,
Yeah.
how do you skip? I couldn't. And I was like, okay, I couldn't remember how to do it. So I had to go find my teenager. I'm like, okay, bring, I brought him outside and I'm like, okay, show me how to skip because it's
Yeah.
been so long. And that's just sad, but it was so much fun.
Yeah. Go
Just
dance.
to be silly, dance, do these things and, find those little moments of
Yeah.
joy. And it's amazing how often they are connected with movement. And, you
Movement
know,
heals.
I mean, if you ever look at kids, they're most joyous when they are running and jumping and playing and doing all of these things. So that really is our natural state. And I think our modern lifestyle definitely wants to pull us away from those things.
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit about how people work with you, and then also, I don't see anything on your website that says women only. So
You
I don't want to make
actually
any
have
kind of
as
assumptions.
many
Okay, good. That is
people from my
fantastic.
pelvic floor therapy work. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
people,
so, yeah, when you think pelvic floor, I always think, well, women that have children or carried babies and, of course, incontinence and all those kind of things. But men have pelvic floors too.
absolutely, they do.
They have. So tell me, what are the different ways that people can work with you?
Well, probably the easiest way right now, and part of my last year's journey as a CEO, is that I have not only taken some of my older courses like Core Restore the Classic, but I created Core Restore 2.0, which is
Mhm.
a brand new course that's on my app, which
Mhm.
is on a brand new app. And I
Mhm.
also just last month released my Move Your Mojo membership. So
Mhm.
with that, I curate a workout calendar. So I take and pull from, my years of work and create a workout calendar that makes sense, right? So
Mhm.
if you want to follow it to the T, you're going to have a well-balanced, weight training, aerial, Pilates, yoga, reformer. If you have one at home, I include it all. I
Mhm.
create playlists because music is important,
Mhm.
and have all those things in the membership. And if you don't follow the calendar to the T, it's also okay, right? Because
Yeah.
my big thing that I teach is you are a unique fingerprint,
Yeah.
right? So if you're doing something that, has you moving on other days, don't think you also have to check this box on this calendar. This
Mhm.
calendar is just there then as a filler for when you do need to move. And I do
Yeah.
recommend moving every 48 hours intentionally.
Yeah. Yeah.
intentionally.
Intentional.
So there is the Move Your Mojo membership. It has Spark, Glow, and Radiance. Spark is just the digital version, meaning you're going to get the workout calendar, the community app. You're going to be in there chattering with each other, cheering each other on. The Spark is where people come to see me once a month. So I have people who have been maybe working. I have people that worked with me for 10, 15 years. I can't get rid of them
Wow.
once I have them. They're just with me.
That's lovely. That's a great problem to have as a CEO. I love
Yeah.
that.
And so, sometimes they just need to come and check in with me once a month. I can do their body fat, their measurements, or we just work on, like I'm remeasuring their DR, their diastasis recti to see if it's closed up, give
Mhm,
them new exercise prescription, new focuses and flows.
mhm,
They also have access to everything in the app as well, and then the Radiance members are the people who come and see me in person. And I
mhm,
say see me in person, but really it's via Zoom or in person here at my studio. So I have people that I work with outside of the area.
mhm.
I am currently on a wait list for that one. So I only see 15 to 20 people maximum for my Radiance membership. So
Gotcha.
until somebody's decided that they're done working with me, I don't have any more space for those at the moment.
That is a good problem to have also as a CEO. I love that. Um, One of the things, as we're talking about, because we're talking a lot about movement, we know that nutrition plays a part. Do you talk about nutrition at all with your clients? Or is that something you just kind of focus just on the physical part of it?
So this is where I probably deviate a lot from my contemporary gurus, meaning nowadays out there in the fitness world, especially online, everybody wants to be everything in the sense of
Yeah.
like, and they want to give you, like you said earlier, this cookie cutter advice or this hard,
Hmm.
like hard and fast, it has to be this way or it's no way. And that is definitely not my style. Like, I work with so many people from so many different walks. So I have a male marathon runner right now who's qualified already for the Boston. And he came to me with a hernia. I got him through the hernia surgery, rehab from the hernia
Wow.
surgery, and he ran Boston this year and is already requalified for Boston coming up. He leaves
I love
this
that.
weekend for Chicago. I work with jujitsus. I work with CrossFitters. I work with Spartans, like competitive Spartans. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I work with moms. I work with
Mhm.
grandmas. I mean, one of my favorite clients, don't tell the rest of them I said this, but one of my favorite clients, she comes all the way from Flint Hill to see me every day. That's an hour each way, and not every day. She comes 2 to 3 times a week, and she's 70 plus years old.
Wow.
Came to me, she couldn't even turn her neck. She was in so much pain. And now she's doing everything on the aerial and reformer. She's doing handstands on the
Oh,
reformer and flipping upside down.
that gives me hope. No,
Yeah,
this
like
77, she can do it. We can all do that.
absolutely. And that's what I like to teach is like, even if you're using my tools here in the studio, or I teach you to use things at home, how can you find your creative courageousness
Hmm.
like a kid?
Yeah.
Right? Like go move
Yeah.
again. So, those are some of the things I like to do and work with the folks here in the studio. And
I love that.
I don't know if that answered your question or not, but
It totally did, even though I've completely forgotten what my question was, but I'm sure it totally did. I love that. My husband and I were chatting yesterday, and of course, we always got the phone, and he was showing me this video because this is a video of Fred Astaire dancing at 77 years old, and it was amazing and beautiful to watch. But I'm like, but that's what happens when you move your body consistently
mhm.
over time. One of my I'm on a health journey myself, and I lost a lot of weight, and I've got more that I want to do, and I want to I want to see what my body can do. Frankly, I just
Yeah.
want to, but my grandparents, my grandfather died at 99. My grandma, her birthday was yesterday.
Happy
She is
birthday, Grandma.
98 years old. And until very recently, she was still very, very mobile. And I'm like, and watching her go downhill, but I'm like,
Mhm.
she's had this long, healthy, physical life. My grandfather did too. And I'm like, I have those genes. I
Yeah.
can do that. I just need to actually take care of myself. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I want to be more like Fred Astaire. I want to be able to do these cool things. And now, like your 77-year-old client, I want to be able to do those kind of things. And when I turned 50 this year, and I'm like, you know what? I feel like I'm just getting started.
You
And
are.
so I'm definitely in that mode. And feel like there's a shift that's happening. And again, maybe it's just my own bias where women are taking care of themselves in a way we never have before. I've talked about this with several of my guests. I'm like, we weren't I love that you started your journey to help people so young, because I think very few people actually have that hit of intuition and follow it the way that you did. I definitely did not. Um, but I also think that when growing up in the era that we did,
Mhm.
I didn't see women taking care of themselves. They were always taking care of everyone
Right,
else and never on the list. So I like this shift now where we're not looking at taking care of ourselves as selfish, but as a priority, because you can't pour from an empty cup.
right.
And so I think what you're doing to support women energetically and physically, because they definitely go together, I think is just such a beautiful way to do it. And how refreshing that you're focusing on the person in front of you. That's
Yeah, and
amazing.
that is the thing, and one of the biggest things I've learned, and maybe this can be, since we are talking to, maybe other CEOs and things out there, is, very much this can happen to us, right? We have a business to run and we have families to raise and we have life. Life is always happening. It does not stop. And I
Mm-mm.
know, like, even in the past year, I quit. So I took like a COVID job and was in a desk job. And then last
Mhm.
year, actually, this past Saturday was my 1 year anniversary of quitting the desk job to fully
Nice.
fly with this
That,
CEO life. And
congratulations. That's awesome.
thank you. And, this past year's been hard. Like I said before, there have been times where I have cried. I have sat there and I got to let that have its emotion. There have been
Mhm.
weeks where I'm like, what am I doing? Does
Yep.
any of this matter to anyone? Does anybody care? Am I beating a dead horse?
Mhm.
Everybody just wants to go listen to that health coach over there on YouTube who's
Mhm.
teaching a cookie cutter program.
Approach.
And
Right.
it's very difficult. This is a very difficult business to be in because
Mhm.
there are so many opinions
Mhm.
and science is always changing.
That's true.
And also because I feel like, in the day of business coaches and things out there now, and I'm not saying this with all business coaches, but
Mhm.
a lot of the business coaches you see, especially in the wellness industry, are, you have to take a stand on something. And that creates this divisiveness, right? Of,
Mhm.
no, you have to do Kegels. No, you don't have to do Kegels. No, wait, they're pronounced Kegels. No, they're pronounced Kegels. Oh my gosh. Like, stop, right? And it's
Yeah.
just so confusing. I can't imagine, one of the things that really comes deep into my heart right now, and one of my like frustrations but also my motivations for building my business the way I'm building it right now, is how do I take something that was already kind of complicated in some ways because science and data and research and life is busy even 20 years ago, this wellness world, but now it's become even more complicated because
Mhm.
everybody is out there pretending they're a health coach, and
Right.
everybody's got an opinion, and we're being told to argue about our opinions so that we stand out on Instagram and we get that
Mhm.
viral blah blah blah. I can't imagine, as a consumer, as a person who doesn't have a wellness background in years and decades of research and education, I can't imagine how
Mhm.
overwhelming it is for you guys.
Yeah.
And that's why when people come into my space, can we just simplify this?
Yeah.
Can we just come back to the bare reality? Like this week, 3 times already with clients, 2 of them are grandmas, one's a mom. I have in Core Restore program, in Core Restore Classic, there's 300 exercises. In Core Restore 2.0, there's like 250 exercises, all core and pelvic floor safe. But I say to them, listen, you don't have to do these things in order. You don't
Mhm.
have to do them perfectly. One of them is rolling like a log. Go take your children out into the yard and roll like a log in the falling leaves. That is your homework.
There you go.
And they're like, what? And I'm like,
What? They've never heard anything like
that's
that.
your homework.
No,
Go
and you're
take
right.
that
It is.
exercise and put it
What?
somewhere fun.
Imagine that. Yeah, you're right, and I think it is interesting to be like on the consumer side of things, and you being on the professional side of things. It is. It is overwhelming. Because there are so many voices. And I think as a business owner, we know this probably in a different way than consumers do, because we're looking on all the voices that are competing with us too.
Yeah,
And I think it's really interesting you bringing up this trend. I don't know if it's a trend or it's a strategy of taking a stand against something so
yeah,
that people understand who you are. But if it's manufactured, And is it really something we need to be arguing about? I don't know. It is crazy.
Yeah.
And, being a modern CEO is very, very different. And I've talked about this on a couple of episodes too. It used to be, back in the 80s or whatever, if you wanted to be, in the health space, or you wanted to do like administrative, tech
Mhm.
things like I do, you would open a store and you would put a listing in the
Or
yellow pages, and you would put a little sign out front, and people would come find
sponsor
you.
your high school football team. You
That's how it was. And it's the digital landscape has really changed everything, because you're right. You're trying to get your message out in front of lots of people, because we have the technology now. We have the internet, but at the same time, I doubt that when you were studying kinesiology, I'm not going to say it right,
correct.
you're studying the human body, you
Yes.
weren't probably thinking, oh, I'm going to have to prep myself to be on YouTube and on video and do all the tech pieces that have to go with it. And oh,
Yes.
now you've got to design a website and a course and all of these things.
Yes.
I'm sure you didn't think about
No.
having to do all of those things. So as a modern entrepreneur, we have all this.
Yeah.
I just think there's additional stresses and things
Yes.
that we just didn't know we were going to get
And
into.
again, it's everything has a blessing and a curse, right? There's yin and yang
Absolutely.
to everything. So while again, our predecessors in that sense had a much simpler life, they
Mhm.
also had a very limited audience where
Yeah.
now we have the potential to work with anyone in the world. Like I've taught
Yeah.
horror store in Australia.
Yeah. I mean,
Like
how amazing is that? Yeah.
yeah, like so we can work anywhere now, but it again, it's this influx of information.
It's a
And
yes.
even for myself, like I'm going to be right here since I am on a CEO podcast, I'll be very transparent. The work that I have done
Mhm.
throughout my entire life. So, just to even back up to my history, I had a spine surgery in 2010 that
Wow.
necessitated me going into Pilates basically full time because I did Pilates to help with my rehab, and my neurosurgeon was like, I don't know what you're doing, but you get to graduate rehab early and keep doing what you're doing. And I'm like, well,
Wow.
guess I'll just get a Pilates certification. And that's how that started. And then I became an aerial yoga certified instructor. And then I was
Mm,
a yoga instructor. And way back in all of that, I became a pelvic floor certified specialist. So,
mhm,
all those things started to build together because I was doing my own work. I had spine surgery, then
mm,
I had a hysterectomy in
mm.
2017, which
Wow.
I don't care what a doctor tells you, you are more prone to pelvic floor dysfunction or prolapse after
Mhm,
having a hysterectomy. So I had to do my own homework. I was already a pelvic floor specialist at the time, so I started my
mhm,
own homework.
mhm.
And I also just had rotator cuff surgery repair in the past 2 years from a
Wow.
fall. So it's one of those things where I've done my own work, and even
Yeah.
energetically and wellness. Like you talk about Stacy. Stacy and I know each other, and I've reached out to Stacy before, like in my moments of like, because even for us,
Mhm.
we need coaches too, right? Or we
Absolutely.
need friends. We need people to help hold the ropes. You cannot do this alone. You will go
Mm-mm.
crazy. And so I've had to reach out to a couple of my, friends who are also CEOs and
Mhm.
go hold the ropes because
Yeah, things are going crazy. I need a little support here. Well, that's the whole point of this, and the co-op is I want, because it's very lonely and weird to
yes,
be a CEO, especially I think for those of us that came from having a job. We've been employees. I say I'm an entrepreneur 25 years in the making. So I was a long time as an employee, and it's a big switch.
yeah,
And yeah, there's so much when you move into a business full time, and so much more than you even realize. Like you get into it and you're like,
yeah.
it's funny. I was joking the other day, and I'm like, okay, I'm finally to the point in my business where I know what I don't know. And that's scarier than when I didn't know what I didn't know. And so, it's just a fascinating thing, all the way around, this whole business
Yeah, and again, it's
world that
it's
we're in.
also seasonal, right? So, like,
Yes.
if diving into a couple of words there, like balance and sustainable. I also am
Yeah.
not a huge fan of either one of those words, and I can tell
Okay.
you why if you want to know.
Yes, I do.
But balance is basically, it's impossible. So balance
Hmm.
is actually, if you think of tensegrity models, and you're a tensegrity model, the way you move is
Hmm.
tensegrity at work.
Hmm.
Balance is just imbalance in motion. That's all it is,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
can't sustain it.
Mm-mm.
Right? So the word I like to teach my clients is harmony, right?
Mm.
And especially in today's life, Noise, you can clang and bang. And if you've ever been in, like I was a marching band chaperone for years. If you've ever been
My
in a
son
marching
was played
band,
trumpet.
okay, my daughter's trumpet. So if you've ever been around a marching band when they're warming up before the band director actually gets there, it's a
Oh,
chaos of
cacophony
noise.
of
Yes.
yes. Yeah.
And then it starts to make sense and become music. And why?
Mhm.
Because of the rest,
Mm.
the space,
Mhm.
right? What starts to make a melody is the space,
Wow.
right?
Never thought about it that way. Yeah.
And then those instruments can come into harmony. The trombone's not playing what the trumpet's playing.
Mm-mm.
The drums aren't playing what the saxophone is playing, but
Mm-mm.
yet it makes this harmony. So how do we take these things in our life, whether that's movement, our business, our family, our own health, like navigating menopause? How do we realize that we don't have to balance any of these things? We
Mhm.
do need to figure out the harmony of them. How do
Mhm.
they coexist?
That's nice.
How do we
Yeah.
bring in margins of space so that it's not just this chaos of noise around us, creating
Mhm.
more stress, more cortisol, more overwhelm, but how do we actually bring in these pieces? And that goes
Mhm.
back to those seasons and being natural beings, right?
Mhm.
So right now, I just spent the past year kicking my tail building new courses. I have 6 online courses now. I've got a membership I just released last month. I have been building,
Yes, you are.
and
Building
I
mode.
know that
Mhm.
I am now going to draw back.
Mhm.
I'm not building anything else for at least the next year. I am
Yeah.
going to now nourish and nurture that which
Mhm.
I've built.
Nice.
That's the season I'm in now. And
Yeah.
that's what's gotten me through the past couple of months, even up to last week. I'm going to be honest, Denise. Even last week, I'm like, I'm going to burn the ships. I'm going to burn it all down.
We do that regularly as CEOs. Like, mm-mm.
Where's the lighter?
Like, yep.
How can this work?
Oh, I had a moment last night. I was like, okay, burn it all down.
Burn it all
Um,
down. Just burn it
it
down.
lasted 90 seconds, but
90
we,
seconds, right? That's all
yeah.
your emotions need are 90 seconds of
And
acknowledgement.
Stacy helped me learn that because I was not a feeling person because I was always like, oh, if I start feeling is letting it out, I'm like, I'll just never stop. No, so you just let it happen.
And the first few times you let that happen, it might be a little bit of a landslide, like your 90
Mhm.
seconds might end up 90 minutes, but
Mhm.
eventually,
Yeah, you do rein it back in.
yeah, it eventually, again, it's that consistency, right? If you
Yeah.
consistently start to feel your emotions, then they
Mhm.
don't need as much time to process. But if you've been bottling up frustration, overwhelm, and anger for 30 years, the first few times you go to let it out, it might be
Yeah.
a little bit of a flood.
Oh yeah, it's going to be a flood. It's going to
Yeah,
be a flood, but it does slow down to a trickle after
it
a little
does.
while.
Right. Everything starts to dissipate.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love the illusion of the harmony there. I am such a black and white thinker. I'm an all or nothing, and I was recently diagnosed with ADHD, and I really think it's because I've always been ADHD. I know that now, but as I got into perimenopause and my hormones start, and like I'm reading about this now, and I'm like,
Mhm.
there are so many women my age, late 40s, early 50s, diagnosed with ADHD then for multiple reasons. And, we didn't used to think girls had ADHD.
Right.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Right.
But I remember being in the car with my husband a few years ago and telling him, I'm like, I'm really worried about my brain. I'm like, I'm not remembering things.
Mhm.
I'm not, my anxiety. I had no idea. I really did. It seems so silly now, but I had no idea what role perimenopause and hormones play in our anxiety, our emotions, our brain fog, all of those things. And so, like I said, now I know I've always had ADHD. I can look back and I'm like, okay, that explains. And I
Same
was like,
here.
oh, I can't have ADHD. I'm never late anywhere. Well,
Yeah.
not late anywhere because I have too much anxiety to be late.
Yes. I
that,
relate totally. I haven't been
that's a whole,
diagnosed yet, but I probably should be.
and so for me, like that's probably been the hardest part is the anxiety part of everything. But it's just fascinating that as we age and our bodies change and our hormones change, how much that there is this interplay between our hormones, our um, nervous systems, our bodies just in general, how it all works together. I remember talking to my doctor one time, and he was like, this is, medicine's not a perfect science. I'm like, what do you mean? Like that made me very nervous. He goes, because everybody is different.
Everybody is different. Yeah, that's a wise
And
doctor.
that's just it. But what a wonderful resource you are, and your approach is just lovely. And I mean, just a warm welcome, change, I think, from a lot of the noise that we hear out there. So thank you for coming and sharing that. And I'm so happy to share you with our little growing community. And I'm glad I finally got to talk to you. It's
Yes,
amazing. It finally happened. So
it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
thank you. I'll put all the stuff out there. Everybody, if you have a moment, spend a little time with Jamie. Check out her stuff. I will put links to her website, but you can go to jamiehaynes.com, and all of her stuff is there. I know a little bit about her tech background because her system is built on the same system as mine. So I know exactly what she's had to go through this year to make all that happen. Fantastic job. Everything looks so good.
Thank you.
So thank you for coming and spending some time with us today. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Denise. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Daring CEO Co-op podcast. If you'd like to have more support and join our community, we'd love to have you. You can reach us by going to daringceo.com. There you're going to find a link for our free Facebook community. And if you'd like to be a podcast member, there will be a link for that as well. Thank you for spending this time with us. Now, go be daring.